Good evening and welcome to Reexamined. I'm Gino, and that over there, ladies and gentlemen, is the host of Reexamined, Miss Meghan Walsh. Meghan, how are you tonight?
Hi, Gino. How are you? Hi, everybody. Sorry we didn't make it last night. We've had some internet issues, so bear with us tonight. And we don't have Lindsay. We're waiting for her to join us since we decided to try to refilm again tonight for you guys. So thanks for joining, everyone that is. Please share this out. Please like, subscribe, all of that stuff, and let's get this show on the road.
Absolutely. I miss doing this. It's been a little while, little hiatus, but episode 21, the Adam Walsh Files. And tonight, as always, Megan and Lindsay connect dots. That's what we do, connect dots. And it just shows the intricate network of folks, and I use folks loosely, that are involved in all of this sinister and nefarious stuff that's going on in our world. And I just think the more exposure we bring to it, the better. And I think what's more revolutionary than when Adam went missing in 1981? Like that changed this country forever. And it's such an integral part of the history of America in a very negative way, creating a lot of fear. And I just think it's important that shows like this and I know there's other researchers that look into Adam's disappearance and have done some good work. But it's just important. We can't let that memory die. We have to keep fighting and get the truth out there. And that's why I love doing this show with you, Megan.
Thanks, Gino. I love
Uh,
doing this show too, and it has been a minute. We've got, a lot of stuff going on in the world. Obviously, we have to mention Diddy and everything that's kind of coming out about that. We'll touch on that towards the end of tonight's show. But I think that really seeing how the different levels and different areas, if you will, for lack of a better term, how they operate together, how this works, I think has been a really, big point that we've tried to bring to everybody, and really show who those players are in a fundamental way. And with proofs and with research. And, we mentioned Lindsay, of course, and we have to also mention the amazing Shannon. We'll be going over some of her posts tonight regarding the Bush crime family, which needs to definitely be talked about more than it is right now. As well as other things like how did the national center start? We found legislation that was already being shopped around with Joe Biden on it, as well as Paula Hawkins that we saw at the signing and all of the national center stuff. But really they were shopping the legislation around and having an issue with sponsors and getting it passed through Congress. And then all of a sudden we have Adam Walsh and John Walsh who got that legislation passed, with which established the National Center for Missing Exploited Children, essentially establishing the bounties and incentives on our children's heads. I mean, through that organization, we have a playbook set up that then has been used to create all of these other, what I call the child trafficking, or excuse me, that's what's actually happening, but the child protection and safety grift that is going on in America. And I don't think that, and globally as well, I don't mean to leave that out, but what we focus on here is domestic and how that then, affects us globally and how that translates. But we have an issue going on here that we really do need to talk about, and that is the child protection and safety grift, and the NGOs and nonprofits that hold that up. And really are the gatekeepers for that, right? And what is actually going on? I think that's what we've been questioning throughout these past years. That's where we've looked at every other aspect, but I think that a big missing link and why this hasn't fluidly made sense or been resolved is because we're not really looking at that child protection grift or the hoax, or I'm using grift because that's what we use these days to describe it. But we really need to be looking at, this says the National Center for Missing Exploited Children. Well, is it the National Center for missing and exploited children. If you have them, if you need to missing or exploit a child, we go there. We know, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but the questions that are, needing to be asked of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, as well as the reopening of Adam's case, from everything that we've seen from going through the original documents themselves. This has been 40 plus years. And these were narratives that we were given. And as you mentioned, how has that affected us as a nation, and especially as parents, especially as children that grew up after, that incident, and how that changed, that echelon, if you will, of society, which does ultimately affect our entire society. So that's why it is so important for us to look at that. And when we're at a point today where we have something like Child Protective Services that is clearly a failing business that is trafficking our children, how did we get here? Who put this in place? Who passed this? And what I think that we've done a decent job of doing and continue to do is show, what led up to that. What was the timeline? This national center was founded. When was ASFA passed by the Clintons after that? When were these, these acts and legislation passed behind our back, which is what, NGOs are given? That's the perk of it, right? That we don't realize is that NGOs and nonprofits, they not only get federal funding, but then they also have lobbying power, which is how things are passed without our voting or our knowledge or consent, sometimes things like that, and how that's also affected us, like the sex offender registry, or the missing database in itself, Amber Alert, things like that that we talk about regularly on the show.
Right. Well said, Megan, as always. Um, I gotta say, like, I know just talking with my own family, and my family's kind of a good barometer for me when I look at what the country believes, because I have a pretty diverse family on both sides. Like, we have the right wingers, we have the left wingers, we have a bunch of people in the middle, we have people that are atheists, that are Christian. Like, it's a good mix for me to kind of just feel things out and see where people stand. And I've had lots of private conversations about your case and what's going on in the world with children and trafficking. And I would say most of them have heard things about the border. That's very common. People know about that stuff. But when you start talking about Adam Walsh and what happened to Adam, and subsequently where we are, fast forward 42, 43 years, whatever it is, they're blown away. And sometimes it's this look of disbelief. But I gotta say, I'm encouraged, because most of them will ask more questions. And that's a good sign to me that people are realizing, like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't just believe everything I hear. Maybe I need to, like, dig into this a little bit. And that's really encouraging to me, Megan, because I got to tell you, for years it wasn't like that. If I would have brought this stuff up just maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there's no way they would have listened to it. They would have been like, "Oh my gosh, you're going down another one of those conspiratorial rabbit holes." But now it's like, I think people understand fake news
Yeah.
has really changed things. Being called out and understanding that it's a bunch of propaganda and a lot of fear porn, that people are waking up and are like, you know what? Maybe I will look into this a little bit more. And that's encouraging to me. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have to agree. And even just this past week, I posted a TikTok from a woman who I really loved the video. She was saying, oh, I was friends with this person prior to, the pandemic and all this stuff happening. And, we parted ways. We ended up stop being friends because she kept telling me all of these, what I would have considered tinfoil hat, conspiracy things. And she was like, I'm literally on here today to say that most all of what she told me has now come true. And I was not in a mindset at that time to be able to handle what she was telling me. A lot of it seemed not only mind blowing, but like was too horrific, right? And we've heard that a lot through obviously the child trafficking. That's a valid point. This is horrific stuff that we're talking about, but, you know, we have to talk about it in a grounded and graceful and an actually positive way. I think, it's already bad enough that we have to acknowledge it and figure out what it is. But the point that we're at right now is that that can be the past. It doesn't have to currently be what we're doing. It can be the past, in a near future point, if not now. So we just have to all get on board and understand what this is. And I think that now that, everyone's experienced certain things in one way or another over the past years, especially again with, after Epstein and everything that happened there. And then now we have P. Diddy, and, we're hearing about all these other, celebrities that are connected, like Ashton Kutcher, who is a main connection between Diddy as well as these NGO organizations, with him himself having Thorn, which he had to step down from recently after the David Masterson, whatever his last name is, his best buddy, the serial rapist. So, that's another whole, obviously rabbit hole. And we noticed that all of these people, a good majority of these people behind these organizations protecting children, or these efforts, actually have a past and origins in sexual deviance. And so that's a very interesting angle to understand, whether it's Jeff Koons, whether it's Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore, whether it's Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union at the National Center. All these, we're seeing a certain group. Yes, it's more than just five people and five names, but it is common names. We're seeing commonalities, common denominators, the same names. We see how they hang out with each other. I'm really happy to be at this point because that's what I grew up in, behind the scenes. And I kept trying to explain to people, it's not what you know, it's who you know in this. And, law enforcement is involved heavily with these people. They protect these people. They want to be these people. So they go along with it, or they're at the freak offs, or the different scenarios that aren't necessarily, anything that we would want to be at, right? So, are involved in. And the trafficking, especially, I've talked about Lindsay Harris, my friend, and the Las Vegas Metro Police being involved with Molly Mall and Love and Hip Hop and all of that, and how, the police are involved in these trafficking schemes. So I think a lot of people are realizing different things that have made them now more ready to hear and talk about the real ways that this is happening. And you mentioned the border as well. And I think that obviously everything that happens, because we love and know God, that it's always for a reason. And this has been great in terms of opening people's eyes to how it's done, right? Who's trafficking these kids over the border? Who's taking them in? How are they being trafficked? Because, once they're brought to the border, that's not Mexican traffickers anymore. That's the United States. That's what, that's our DHHS, that's our DHS, our CPS, all of that is trafficking our children, or these border children, excuse me. And what I like to always say and reiterate to people is that the border issue is a manifestation of our domestic child trafficking issue. And that is what people do not want to focus on. They don't want to focus on domestic child trafficking. And I said, I made another post last week that was like, I literally feel lately like I'm in a debate, or whatever we want to call it, with people who think that we should be funding Ukraine. Like, this is again, we're fighting about child trafficking, but we're talking about, oh, we need to fund and support foreign children. And now, of course, I love foreign children. I think that this should not be happening. This is horrific, but we have to look at the root of why it's happening. And that's because we already have a well oiled child trafficking machine in America. And they know that they can bring the children to the border and they'll be able to traffic them. That's why they're doing this. So, we've said before that even the FBI and the National Center themselves, and this is only the reported amount, but over 88 to 92% or so of child trafficking comes from the foster care system. So where is National Center, putting out a campaign about that on social media platforms? Where's the lobbying and the legislation to correct that? Where's the addressing CPS and doing the things that kind of an authority should cover? And that's what we're not looking at. Why do we have this cognitive dissonance in America when we're talking about celebrities? We're talking about letter agencies, we're talking about the government, we're talking about election fraud, we're talking about everything, but we're not talking about domestic child trafficking. We're not talking about who is that in our government, what agency. I always say I'm not good at math, but if we ended CPS, doesn't that mean that the reported only reported 88 to 92% of child trafficking, which is almost 100%? Ends, right? That source and that supply is cut, is the point there. Um, and then that gets into, of course, like we talk about how community based care under Obama was manipulated and now utilized to work against us. These mandated reporters and these social workers and, all these things that are now being put in our police, offices and the sheriff's departments and all this kind of stuff on a local level. It's just getting very mushy, and it's really messing up what law should be, what the real protection of children is. We just had the overturning of the Chevron deference, and that really did a lot for administrative agencies and everything, which CPS is included in that. So we're making great progress, and people are really learning. But I think that now it's time to get more, to delineate this better and really start to understand in America what are the roots of our child trafficking. Because are we saying that, is there child trafficking in America or is there not? I think that's pretty naive to all of a sudden go, oh, no, there's no child trafficking in America. Obviously there is. So, how is this happening? And do we care about American children and American families? We're talking about it. Patriots are saying, oh, the attack on the nuclear family, this, that, and the other. But then we're not, fluidly connecting that, addressing it, and responding to correct it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it makes sense. And I always have to ask the question why? Why don't politicians want to talk about this subject? I mean, I think I know why. It's always the mighty dollar, and it's all being funded by us. Megan, you made me think there for a second about National Center. Why doesn't the National Center have pages and pages of returned children? Why aren't there just picture after picture after picture of children that are being returned? Because honestly, if we're losing 800,000 plus children a year, I think that's the annual number that I last saw, where are all these kids going? I never hear about this. Oh my gosh, every now and then you'll hear a rescue, a raid, and they might save 20 or 30 kids or something like that. But you never hear what happens after that. Where are those kids going after the supposed raid? Maybe it's a good raid, maybe it isn't. I don't know, but I'm not seeing the results of it. And National Center, if this is that's why it was started, folks. Adam disappeared, supposedly, right? Why in the world are we not seeing pictures of thousands of kids and saying they were returned safely to their mother and father on this date and blah? Why? I think that's a valid question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so too. Not only why, but also all these missing children, how are they missing? I don't think that we're asking that enough. Each of these children have stories on how went missing, and they're not all by far. We're very contradictory in this in this rationale, excuse me, because we statistically know that when something happens to a child, it's most likely a family member or someone close to the family. Yet, on a national level, and since Adam, we have this whole push for stranger danger, the pedophile in your neighborhood, all of this kind of stuff that really deflects from family trafficking, family abuse. And again, this isn't like the democratic side of, now we need to demonize, parents and say that they can't raise their children and all this. We're not talking about a majority. We're talking about a culture, though, that you just asked, why don't politicians talk about it? Why aren't people talking about it? Yes, it's the money, but also it's those underlying realities of child trafficking and child abuse in our country that have been covered by these cases like Adam or these stranger danger or the National Center and stuff like that, which is again family trafficking, family abuse when they're in these circles, these occultic circles, or different reasons why they're involved in doing that with their children. We could get into MK Ultra, we could get into satanic ritual abuse, we could just get into family trafficking because that's the culture, different things like that. But nonetheless, this, just like the National Center being developed and formed by Congress, not grassroots, by Congress, to be, as Kathy O'Brien and others have declared and spoken as well about, to be that front for the public of the real aspects of trafficking, like by our government and those people involved, the families involved in the government, and again those NGOs and stuff that people are creating, that then how is that used, how is money laundering, how does blackmail play into this, how what did happen to those missing children. Each of those children has a story. Why don't we know those stories of how those children went missing? Why isn't that on the database instead of eye color, hair, height, age, ethnicity, where you're basically shopping for a child on
Advertising,
the
yeah.
database? This is it is. It's advertising. And now they have an app where, wherever you go and are traveling, you can look up the missing kids in that area. I mean, what, available children? Like, what, this is, and then we talk about the adoption sites that literally have ads for children up on their sites. And this is, the fact that we're so desensitized, that's really what the issue is here. The issue is not that it's too hard for people to hear, it's that we're desensitized and we don't care.
I agree. I would say desensitized and also misinformed. I know a lot of people, just in recent years that I've spoken to about this stuff, a lot of them had no idea. Now they have an idea, and then I always say, "Well, what are you going to do about it after this? Now you have the information. What's the next step?" Not everybody has to do a podcast, Megan, but I mean, we don't need more podcasts. We need more action, is what we need. We need people to actually do the hard work. And whatever you're called to do it to the best of your ability, for crying out loud. But something's got to happen. You mentioned about deviance before, and I would venture to guess that we have many deviants running our current government, and for decades, really, not just the current one. It's been going on for decades, and a lot of them like to cover up their crimes by legislating more laws that favor them and hide the truth of what's going on. I think that's a huge part of what's going on, especially with like you mentioned CPS and everything, right? I mean, all the funding that goes to CPS. There's a reason. There's a reason. These people are all involved. It's a network. It's disgusting. But if they can focus to the border and keep your eyes looking at that, then they can hide all their crimes. And hey, it's
Yeah.
brilliantly evil. They've been doing it very well for a long time.
Well, and there's a lot of people, I mean, or not a lot, I shouldn't say it like that, but there are certain people that we have realized in this past year or so specifically that, are doing that deliberately. They want the border to be a distraction, even though they're talking about, oh, we care about child trafficking. But then again, we need to look deeper into these things. And are these people maybe people that are involved in child trafficking? And so now they're creating a new grift, right? To distract or to keep cover on the National Center, which is the largest established one. I mean, we're not talking about a little local organization. We're talking about the National and International Children's Authority. And as a nonprofit, not as an agency. That gets into another thing that we've talked about before on this show. What is the National Center really when you're backed by Secret Service, the DOD, the FBI, every agency that we have is involved and backed. The National Center is backed, and they're involved with it. So, or hold board positions or administrative positions, or they're donors and different things. And that's a lot of what people are seeing with the Diddy situation stuff also, is these shell or organizations or companies that are then used to launder and traffic and do these nefarious things behind the scenes. So I think that once we can understand what the playbook and what these methods are, then it becomes a lot easier to apply that and observe and kind of delineate from there. I think, like you said, the misinformation, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Gino, but at a point, I have to be the one to push for this forward movement to say that, at this point in time, if you aren't aware of this at this point, whether you want to talk about it, whether you want to think about it or not, or get involved, you are part of the issue, the problem. I hate when people say that, but it's real. If you're still saying, oh, that's too much, oh, I can't take it, that is probably, with all due respect, I think people just need to understand that's probably the most disgusting thing to hear from people that you could possibly hear. How about the children that are being raped and murdered and sold while you can't handle how it sounds or to talk about it or do something? And the fact that we have influencers and people like this that are blowing it so out of control with all these big notions that are not saying that they're not real, but that we can't do anything about, then that leaves the public in a position where, what's the point? When really the resolve to this, the solution is getting local. It is getting involved simply in your community. And that's another thing. People don't like the answer on how to get involved because it's not glamorous. It's not crazy. It's not, on some big platform or whatever. It's getting involved locally in your community, finding out who that child trafficking racket is, who is the agent, who is the State Department, who are those state prosecutors, who are the GALs, who are the organizations in the community that are contracted to handle the case plans, who are the pharmacies that are contracted to be delving out the drugs to the foster children, who are the foster parents, what is going on, who are your dependency judges, get their Zoom link and start court watching. Like, it's not glamorous, but it's fundamental and it's very doable. So I think that's the dichotomy that we kind of face in this, in this initiative, right, if you will.
Gosh, that's so important what you said, Megan. It isn't sexy. It isn't. And to say that, oh geez, I don't know if I could really get involved in that, or it's just horrific. Yes, it's horrific. That's why we need you to be involved in it. We want the horrificness to stop at some point. And if we just turn a blind eye to it, you're right. You are part of the problem. I mean, that goes for anything really in life. I mean, if you know there's an issue or a problem or some kind of behavior that's, not good for your community, that needs to be addressed and corrected so that you can prosper, so that the community can prosper together. And I don't mean prosper financially, that yes, that could come with it, but I mean just prosper in health, prosper mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah.
All of that's important. But if you just sit back and do nothing, and look, I'll raise my hand. I used to sit back and do nothing. I knew there was lots of problems. I didn't, not necessarily with the trafficking thing, but other things in my own community. And I just kind of sat there and said, someone else is taking care of it. I can just go do my 9 to 5 and raise my family and everything's going to be fine. Well, as we've seen, everything's not fine. That's why everything's falling apart at the seams, because we've all just sat back and literally did nothing. And it's really embarrassing, to be honest, Megan, because it does get to a point where, without mentioning names, there's just lots of people that talk a mean game but actually don't back it up. And that's what's really frustrated me personally. This is not Megan's opinion. This is my own. Megan might agree, might disagree. I just have seen it time and time again where people have said, I care about this, I care about it. But then their actions are quite the contrary. Like, I don't see that. And that's very, very frustrating for someone like me, because I don't know. I maybe I'm old school, Megan. It used to be like a handshake and everybody's like, yeah, okay, we'll work together. It's a contract, right? It's a deal. It just doesn't seem like that anymore. And I don't know if it's because it's not sexy. They're not going to get the clicks. They're not going to get the views. I don't know what it is. Or maybe it's fear. It could be fear. But at some point, that has to drive you in the opposite direction. You have to pull a 180 and say, you know what? No, I'm heading straight for it. And this is a hill to die on for me. I think families are a hill to die on. I'm sorry. That will never change for me.
Yeah, I mean, if I was given a purpose in life, I'm not going to trade this one up. It's an honor, to be honest. As crazy as it is, I can't see anything would be worth dying on a hill for besides this, to be honest, in our society today. And so, I do have to agree with you on that. And I think that, I was really taken aback. I talk about this regularly in terms of, I came forward, when people were already talking about child trafficking, we already had Epstein, all of this. And I do humbly admit I'm one that thought that I was going to come out with this information, and that people would be very happy to hear this, especially all the researchers and all the truthers and all the everything. I thought this would be like, not like a gift, but like oh my God, like a big moment here, that we got to a different place, that we can really understand who these names are behind the curtain of Oz, if you will. And I really thought that this would really bring down a lot of it, expose a lot of it, and help to end the situation. But in return, of course, I admit, I didn't think that they would ever do it to me. I didn't realize the level of these people at the time. I thought my parents would be proud of me. And instead we see the playbook of, suddenly in a day I'm crazy, they take the children, it's the whole discrediting and attack on the whistleblower, if you will, for lack of a better way to put it, in short. Um, and so, for me, that's been something that's been really hard to, handle and deal with, especially it going on, it'll be 3 years plus, we're almost at 4 years, or I've been enduring this domestic terrorism, where my children have been enduring it. That's another big issue in this, is that we're all talking about it from our perspective. We all think we know better. We all have a different way, yada, yada, this, that, and the other, but no one is talking about the perspective of the children being put through this, and what they're actually put through, and whether that actually benefits them, how we're seeing that play out in society today, and what the trajectory of that is if we keep allowing it to continue. It's this whole, there's a big grift and psyop going on. Let's not, skirt around it. That's making it, this gory, horror show, like you said, sexy in a horrific way, right? Like, what I call child trafficking porn at this point. And it's what it's doing is, it's terrorizing people. It's turning people off. It's making people say, oh, that's crazy, or that's a conspiracy theory, or oh, that's too much for me to be able to handle, when actually this issue is, again, very fundamental. It is digestible when we talk about it, and when we realize that in every county and local community there is a CPS that is removing children from loving homes for the quotas and incentives provided by federal funding through Title IV, ASFA, all of that. The National Center for Missing Exploited Children was the organization to establish all of this. It was the first playbook and prototype established by Congress to then do all of this and enable these things like ASFA and Title IV. Also, like I've said before, why are there Adam Walsh adoption forms for every interstate, out of state, and international adoption? What does that have to do with missing and exploited children? So, what are we talking about here? Is this a monopoly on our children's issues, on the child protection grift here, that we're making these things up that, generate money, which is taxpayers' money? And it also garners control, as well as loopholes, like, amendment, right? Our civil rights can be violated through these NGOs and things like that, because of what they're behind the scenes, and what an NGO status gives them, right, in itself, and how have we gotten there. So these are very, again, not sexy, not glamorous, not Diddy freak off, stuff, but this is how we got here. This is the fundamentals of what's working and how it's working in our country. When everyone sits every day and talks about elections and talks about, the weather stuff and all these intricacies, is my point. That's very real. It's great. We all need to be talking about our own lanes in these and different things, but we also still have to, understand that the children are what matter. This is our future. We know there's attack on the American family and on nuclear family in general. We know there is a father's rights and NAMBLA and, all of this kind of initiative also going on parallel. We know that the courts are giving children through family court and CPS to abusers and pedophiles. We know that the suicide rates of families and or parents and children involved in the foster care system have risen through the roof. The amount of runaways from the system. If you're taking children from these horrible situations and you're giving them such a better life, and these resources are so great, and these homes with strangers that you're just plopping them in and paying strangers to take care of them like they're going to be there, like they're going to take care of them like their own, and like this child is going to be okay. Like, thank you for putting me with strangers. And what, maybe I'm in a bigger house, so you're telling me I should be happy now? Like, we fundamentally know that that's splitting children. Every child wants to know where they come from, where their origin is. It's why we all ask or wonder, no matter what we decide later, about God, because that's our, or, that's each of our place of origin ultimately. And we need to be understanding the effects, and why I always talk about the better ways that there are through community, not Obama, infiltrated community-based care, but real community who understands the importance of and supports the importance of nuclear families, and to be supporting. Why are we trafficking children, taking the children out, transporting them around, taking them to all these different things and everything for money, when these are adult issues that are putting, like, we're literally trafficking the victims if they're actually victims, which now at this point we have an over 77 to 80% removal rate, or unfounded removals, with a less than 5% return rate of the children. I mean, this is not okay, guys. This is very fundamental. I'm not a rocket scientist to be making all of this kind of stuff up. We've done the time and the years and the experience to research this, to pull the statistics for you, to put this out in a very grounded and real way so that we can address it. And where we're meeting an issue with this is the public actually doing something about it.
Hmm. I'll just put an exclamation point on that. That was so good. That's exactly it. That sums it up perfectly. It's not this big complicated or overcomplicated thing. Like you said, it's a very basic thing. I mean, you go back to slavery. This is just the extension of slavery. Taking something that does not belong to you, a human life and children, and then using them for your sick, twisted pleasure. I don't know how, Meghan, sometimes I literally have to pinch myself and say, okay, wait a minute, wait, is this actually really happening? Even though I know it is, because now I've been in this 3 years with you and have seen it firsthand, but you still think, that, how is this possible? How can human beings be this deviant and this low to go to these type of like lengths? It's so disgusting. And I don't know. And just to know that, like,
I mean,
your
spiritually, they've
brother,
heard
like,
it. Sorry.
it's just, I mean, like, to know that your
Sorry.
brother was used like that to start to kick all this stuff off. I mean, that should be one of the most disturbing things you've ever heard.
It is. It is very disturbing. My
Mm-hmm.
brother and I, along with people like Eton Patz and Johnny Gosh, ultimately, but my brother and I were literally the first like exploited children by these, organization, by the National Center for, you know, again, for missing and exploited children. What if we put that title listed up and we actually capitalize the "for" in all caps? Would that make more sense then? I mean, we have to start looking at what's really going on in plain sight. And, I couldn't agree more. We have to be concerned with that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still on the page where symbolism will be their downfall. Their own words will be used against them at some point. I just wish it was yesterday. Like, something's got to give. I believe God's in it. I believe God is bringing justice, but I got to tell you, the wheels of justice spin so slow, and sometimes they go backwards. And that's very troubling for me as an American citizen who lives in supposedly a constitutional republic where there's no justice. I mean, I forgot the scripture. Didn't I send you a scripture before? I think it was from Proverbs. You used to have it for your background. Sometimes you put it on there. And I can't remember. It was about justice and how the people mourn for justice. I forgot what it was. Something like that. And it's so true. I mean, if you're sitting at your home and you're like, okay, my life's pretty good. Things are going all right. I got some bills, things are paid. But But if you're living a life of one of these parents that have, like Megan, that has had these atrocities happen to him intentionally, like that's not normal. That's a sick, twisted, demonic thing. And I mean, it's obviously it's a spiritual thing going on too. This thing's been going on. This has gone on for millennia. I mean, you go back to Moloch and Baal and all this stuff too. I mean, it's the same evil that's behind it. It's just now it's being funded by us. Like they're like they got it, Megan.
Hmm.
Sometimes I think these guys are sitting around a big oval conference room table. They're all smoking their big stogies. They've got their mixed drinks in front of them, scotch on the rocks, and they're all just laughing at us. They ain't gonna do anything. They're lazy,
Hmm.
and half of them don't believe it.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's how, that's, I mean, we were literally talking about that today and everything. It's like, we have all these whistleblowers now, or victims, or whatever variable, right? But where do we go? What do we do with, like, when you're going, it's somebody like John Walsh or P. Diddy or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Where do you get to go for justice and to be heard and believed, and have people actually stand up for you, where they're not going to be infiltrated or threatened or paid off, or everything, because that's what happens. And we've been we've allowed that to happen. I don't know why. I mean, I don't think we're necessarily sitting around allowing it, but we're not doing anything about it. And yet, again, it goes back to that desensitization of, like, do we just get hammered so much that eventually we're just like, okay, well, there's nowhere to go. We just accept that this is, how society is. And when it comes to children and the issues that we're talking about here, I refuse. I strike me down. I mean, don't, but like, really, if I refuse to be desensitized about that, or to say, oh, well, this is, I think that people don't know what a duty is anymore. I don't think they feel obligated to their duties as Americans, and to be able to maintain the rights that they enjoy every day. I have to say, about 2 years ago in all of this, I literally was sitting, I've talked to you about this, Gino. I was literally sitting in the car driving, another hour or whatever, to go to another court thing, or some unconstitutional drug test for, that was illegally done, all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there going, gosh, I really have, and if, like, I really have heart now and understand. I can't imagine what these soldiers and people that go and fight for our country and are in Iraq, or they're in, I mean, we're not getting into the debate of what war is. I'm talking about, they're already there. This is, they're there. They've been fighting. This is for point's sake. And here we have people in America, while they're risking their lives so that you have your freedoms and everything. We have people here who are flipping out, on a Saturday about missing a pool party. I mean, that's a luxury. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but can we put that in perspective? Like, why can't we be a little more sophisticated about these things? Why can't we look in different perspectives than our own? And that's a lot of the programming in America. Oh, nothing's going to happen until it happens. We're not going to do anything until it happens to us, or it's not real unless it happens to us. And I hate to say, because I'm not a fear monger or anything like that, I speak against that actually. But what fundamentally people need to understand is what is going on here. Why I am speaking out, why I show up every day, is because I am trying to warn the public. I am trying to protect all of us. And it's not just me, but I'm speaking for myself here. I show up to do this because it will be on your doorstep before it's already happening. We have a trajectory of 1 in 3. Every 1 out of 3 children will have to deal with CPS in their life. This is something that children should never know about, should never have to come in contact with. It is spiritual. It's breaking our children. It's adulting them. It is a pipeline to prison and trafficking for our society. It is a guaranteed pipeline. I hope people understand that. The foster care system, most of the boys and everything end up in juvenile, which then ends up in prison. A lot of the girls too, or they're out trafficking themselves on the street at 18 years old, if not sooner, if not 13, 14, with what we're seeing through the foster care system, with even the videos and evidence of CPS workers, grooming and coaching the girls on how to go out and prostitute themselves and traffic themselves, which is one of the things I started speaking up and asking questions about of my own local foster home, Hibiscus House. And that created, a lot of stirring up. And we actually had people come forward and whistleblow, John Karapi that fundraised even started. And, we had people come out. So that's what needs to be happening, because we're living in this space of like, oh, it's so big, or oh, there's nothing we can do, but we want to end it and all of that. But we're not just saying like, okay, we have everything that we need. We know the agencies doing this. We know the NGOs overseeing it and putting this into place. We know on the local level who the low hanging fruit are, like social workers and the administrators and everything that go out and procure the children, right? Then we've got the state attorneys and the governors that are giving the funding, which is furthering your child trafficking in your state. You're funding it, DeSantis. Which actually, I'll interject. I just saw that, or was just told that Tiffany Justice is listed as a Trump speaker, which is very interesting. I know people, I'm trying to understand, guys, and I know everyone says Trump puts people in the spotlight to expose them, but part of my racket in Florida that is, trafficking and did do this to me and my children is Tiffany Justice. It's Eric Flowers, Tiffany Justice, Ron DeSantis, Ashley Moody, the AG. These are all the main players that are now being risen up. I grew up with Tiffany Justice. I was literally texting with her before my kids were taken. And she started to realize that I probably wasn't going to benefit her, right? I probably wasn't going to be a good person for her to rise up in her glory. And Moms for Liberty is a shill organization. It is rhinos. They do not care about the American family. I had it. Liberty Moms was started in Vero by Tiffany Justice and Jennifer Pippin, whose husband is an outright and proud Freemason. When I contacted them because I was in the community, we were supposed to have this camaraderie because of what I was doing with the rallies and bridge walks and awareness events of CPS and family court. And so I reached out to them like anyone would do in your community to join forces and protect my children and show what's going on. And it was crickets, guys. Crickets. These women want nothing to do with actually helping children, actually doing anything. And then there's DeSantis endorsing Eric Flowers, propping up and giving Tiffany Justice, committees. And now she's speaking with Trump, or a speaker for Trump's thing, while here's people like myself and those that are behind me completely ignored and, threatened and terrorized and more. Sorry, I went on a side tangent, but
No,
that needs
need,
to be spoken
need,
about quick.
it
Sorry.
needs to be
It's on
said.
my
It
chest.
needs to be said for sure. And we have to ask that question. I don't know. I like asking a lot of questions, Megan, because I think when you ask questions, you learn. That's a very important
Yeah.
thing. And I know the media today doesn't want you to ask questions. I wonder why that is. So they can spread their propaganda, their lies, and keep the truth suppressed. I mean, that's what it sure looks like to me. But someone like Meghan's story, how in the world? This literally is really hard to wrap my brain around. How in the world does John Walsh's daughter, sister of Adam Walsh, how is this story not being told? You might find a little glimpse of it in some, town's newspaper or something, or maybe a little bit here on social media. Someone posts something. Why isn't this national news? Wouldn't you think the guy that is supposedly rescuing children and getting bad guys off the street, wouldn't you think this would be a major headline in newspapers that he has taken his daughter's children? Like, what? How is that not a headline? I remember, Megan, when I first met you, I remember thinking that very thought. I was like, how in the world is it? Like, how did I not hear about this? Like, that's crazy.
I've said it for three. I've said it for three some odd years, Gino, and you've heard me say it. Where is even TMZ's, headline? John Walsh has to save his grandchildren from his crazy daughter. Where is that? They won't talk about that because they know that it's not true. They know that would be libel. They know that that's slander. They know it's defamation. And also, John Walsh is a well celebrated media asset. So why are they going to do that? When we look at this, my father has been supported and worked with every three-letter agency that there is. He's been on CNN, Fox, Discovery, I mean all of the channels. And so we have to look at why is this not being talked about? Why is there a media blackout on it? Why don't people want to talk about it? And you're absolutely right.
Boy, I like that you said he's an asset. Asset can be taken many different ways. I think of it as a monetary asset in one respect, also an asset in propelling the lie forward. Those aren't assets I want to be a part of.
Yeah, for the public. Yeah, for the public. I mean, we have to understand not only what a child protection and safety grift is in America, but what is paid opposition. We have to understand what paid opposition is, and especially when it's in a position of presenting the public. We have other character types like John Walsh that are happening today, i.e., Tim Ballard. It's the same character type. It's just a different human, and if you will, in that position, right? If people can grasp that, but it's really somebody that is an asset that can come forward with the emotional projection and the tone and everything, really give the public an emotional cause, especially about children, that then traumatizes them. It's an aspect of trauma-based mind control, MK Ultra, that is used to then push a police state, which is where the Bush crime family comes in, and all of the background that is John Walsh that no one really ever looked into, rightfully so, because the narrative was put out in the media. I was then born less than a year later. 2 weeks after Adam's disappearance, they're already starting to form the National Center from. I mean, you guys, I've been in this with my children gone for what, 3 years now, 3.5 years. I can't even count the time. And it seems like yesterday. And I've worked hard day and night and through the night. And I don't have a national organization with congressmen and three-letter agencies and Congress itself behind me and everything, or behind any of us. And we're in a completely different place than we were back when, oh, this was supposed to be never happening and this was a big first deal. But it's literally the manipulation to fearmonger the public, to then get them. It's a Hegelian dialect, right? It's problem, reaction, solution. So you're creating the problem, you're getting the reaction of the public with reaction in, by the nature of it, is people being vulnerable, right? They're giving you the authority. Then they're saying, oh my gosh, you know about this happened to you, you have to be the authority on this, you have to be in good spirits or good intentions with this, right? And especially if it's something that happened to you and you're a victim of yourself, so we don't even need to question this, right? Especially when it's made to seem like it's this big issue, deal with child trafficking. This is how we get these federal agencies. This is how we've gotten to the place overall that we are in America and society, with federal agencies versus local efforts and state agencies and things like that. And that really is ineffective. There's no way by default that could actually help the people or be effective whatsoever, because we aren't cattle. We aren't all the same. We aren't, a system can't run or have any positive effects on something like life with its nuances, right? And each unique situation, especially when we're talking about children and families.
It's that labeling system. They've done it forever. Put everybody in one same or in the same box, and then just you all act the same, and we'll control you and do what we want to do with you. But I gotta say, Megan, I don't know if this is a segue or not, but I was just thinking about all these sickos and the networks and the system and all that stuff, and how entertainment is involved heavily in that system. And I remember, man, this is at least a year and a half ago. I remember you telling me in private, we were talking, and you're like, yeah, Kanye and Diddy and all these guys, they're gay and they present themselves as this way in public, but they're this in private. And then you were saying all the deviant parties they were having and stuff, and how you. And I was like, man, that's crazy stuff. Like I had suspected that. I knew they weren't like on the up and up. These aren't people that I want as role models for my children. But did you hit it on the head or out of the ballpark? It's insane how accurate you were. And if you want to kind of dovetail into that, because I really believe a lot of that stuff is going to expose some of the things we've been talking about here. And it might, I think most people watching tonight aren't shocked by that. That's not a shocking statement to them. I think most of them understand that. But what other avenues do you think that those entertainers are going to lead to? What secrets do they hold that might open up a can of worms that maybe people watching wouldn't expect? Is there anything you can think of?
Well, the biggest thing that I hope people learn from this or kind of cognitively put together is the law enforcement aspect and involvement in it. I think that that's very important. I'm not defund police. Look, I've supported police my entire life. It's what I was born into. It's what I did. I was exploited for all of that. I support all of it. But I will never, like I say, support corruption. Okay. So there's a big difference between that. And at this point, we do have law enforcement involved in these trafficking rings. They're also aiding and abetting CPS removals. We're even having now to the point where CPS and social workers are being put in the police departments and everything under the guise of first responders, and again, more of this community liberal stuff, whatever. Which again, I'm not saying that that's not true. I don't want to be contradictory, but you have to delineate that properly. There's a lot of convolution that happens there. There's a lot of loopholes and ways that that's been taken advantage of, or incentivized or used against us. So we have to keep that in mind. But the Diddy stuff and these part literally I grew up in this. Literally God protected me through all of it. I was at those parties and I I can't even describe when I'm at those parties, or when I was at those parties I should say, and I would just have the voice of God in me saying this is not right. It's time to leave. Just like people are hearing, there's different levels of the party and different times that you stay until, depending on what you want to be involved in and all of that. And to be honest, at that point I didn't even know that. It was just my gut and my intuition going like, this isn't right. Why am I at Raven Simone's house, that's supposed to be a party after the VMAs or whatever, and there's all these like random LA kids there. The house is completely vacant. Why would you have a moving party when it's empty? You walk in, there's a big island in the kitchen, there's all these kinds of drinks and food, and you don't know what's going on there. And literally, it would look like these parties in the beginning will look like, and not all of them, I'm just saying some that some of like the LA scene and those kind of sceney parties that aren't so exclusive. Literally, it'll look like they went out and handed out flyers to come to the party. It'll be all these random kids or wannabes in the LA scene and stuff. And when I was leaving those parties and stuff, it did cross my mind like, what happens to some of these people by the end of the night? Or do these people understand the danger that they're putting themselves in, or different things like that? So it is real. I mean, I would get calls, but pocket dials from freak offs and things like that, which is what I've been open that I reported to my father, who then used it as blackmail in our situation. So if we're talking about blackmail, if we're talking about, I mean, I hope at some point my story and the reality of this and the proofs that we brought will hopefully help vindicate a lot of people. That's my goal, actually. I mean, I'm not here to vindicate, but by nature of what it is, I do hope that a lot of people are vindicated, through the shame that has been put on people that have come forward, especially in the past years, about all of this. And I hope that the people that have participated in that shame or that brushing off of these situations can maybe have a moment with themselves to maybe do better moving forward. But yes, I mean, what happens in these industries, they all work hand in hand. And you asked me what I think that the deeper, maybe other aspects that will come out from this. And it's obviously going to be politicians and the other people that were at these parties. Who else was at these parties besides celebrities? It is going to be and has been coming out more that the children and minors that are there are supplied through CPS. Or we saw Diddy with the Ava girl, Maroney, where, he's a local groomer, right? She knew the family knew him. They thought it's okay. And he's really got this girl at his house, grooming her and saying it's his new daughter and thinking it's funny and everything, which again goes into the celebrities that have adopted children, or P. Diddy with guardianships and, having children, Usher, all of that comes into question. But, CPS is going to come out. It is coming out through this. The political involvement, the law enforcement involvement, but also, as Shannon pointed out last week, and if people go over to her page, you can find great threads and exposures on this. But we have Les Wexner, who funded Epstein, donating to the National Center through his shell organization L Brands, which is Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch. We just had the arrest of the CEO or whatever for Abercrombie and Fitch, stemming from the P. Diddy situation. That is ultimately Epstein. We also have Clive Davis with P. Diddy, and they are donating through their companies to the National Center as well, through Viacom, Warner Brothers, all of that. And then, we've got this John Walsh, Anheuser-Busch, Bush family, the political aspect. So it's almost like, do we have the financial with Epstein? We've got the celebrity with P. Diddy, and is this the political and the other aspects with John Walsh that are going to be revealed, that all ultimately trickle down to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children? Also, what will come forward is we know about Epstein Island, and we've talked about Necker Island, which is Richard Branson. And he's connected to the Nexium sex cult with Keith Raniere, and Ghislaine Maxwell with her Terramar and all of that, but also the co-founder of the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And why I bring that up is because Diddy also had an island, Love Island. So that's going to be coming. It already is coming out. There's clips of him talking about it, bragging about it. But I'm hoping that ultimately we'll be able to see the root of, where they're not talking about the minors a lot. The case does not list the minors at this point yet. And so I'm hoping that now that, what's his name? What's the lawyer? Oh gosh, his name. He's got all of the victims now. And he's stated that 25 of I believe it's 120 or so victims that have come forward, don't quote me, are minors, and the youngest being 9 years old, and then a 14-year-old, 15, 16, and so on. So, we really need to have a push for that. We want to know the truth of that. We want that, obviously, to see justice and those children, all of it. So I think that it's really crucial for the public, even if you don't really pay attention to pop culture or rap or whatever, it's very important to be, looking at the patterns, and the avenues and things, just the details of what is, being put out about the Diddy case. Is it a distraction? Of course it's a distraction right now, because there's much deeper people involved in it. The border's a distraction, Diddy's a distraction, because all of these people cannot have the public realize that CPS and these NGOs within the country that they are all involved in, they all prop up, they all benefit from, are really the root of this issue.
Right. I
Which
have
is a
that video.
billion dollar business. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have that video with Diddy saying child welfare. Did you see this video yet? I'm sure you did. It went viral.
Yeah, go ahead and play it.
Yeah.
I think I made my point clear. So if child welfare come in here in 30 minutes, that's on y'all. My kid's downstairs. 15 minutes, the kids have to go. Thank you very much. I think I made my point clear. So if child welfare come in here in 30 minutes, that's on y'all. My kids downstairs. 15 minutes, the kids have to go. Thank you very much. I think I made my point clear. So if child welfare come in here in 30 minutes, that's on y'all. My kids downstairs. 15 minutes, the kids have to go. Thank you very much. I think I made my point clear. So if child welfare come in here in 30 minutes, that's on y'all. My kids downstairs. 15 minutes, the kids have to go. Thank you very much.
Well, that's pretty disturbing. You're at a freak off, getting ready to go freak off, and all of a sudden we're talking about child welfare. What do they have in common?
Yeah, what do they have in common? And as I'll bring up Allie Carter, I hope everyone that hasn't heard about her yet goes and researches ALLY Carter. She has spoken out. She's been one of the only other people with me that I've really heard be very direct and vocal, being the source, where these children are coming from for this trafficking, for these freak offs, for all of these indulgences that these elite partake in. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to come out more and more. I hope people go look at her and also start believing whistleblowers that aren't on a, big platform, aren't propped up, didn't already have a big backing, that's something to question. So, start actually listening to real survivors and start finding out how you can support or donate to real survivors or victims or advocates speaking out, not these platforms, not these big names. They're recreating what we're trying to get away from. So I know it's nature, I know it's what we know, so that's what we want to do. I mean, that's not, we're trying the best, right? But we have to get a little more, like I said, sophisticated and delineate what this is. It's not easy. It's not black and white. I'm not here to be against anyone. I've asked everyone like Tim Ballard, General Flynn, all of these people to, come forward. It's never too late to do what's right. But why aren't they saying that? Why is this being covered up by everybody?
Yeah, those are the questions that need to be asked. I've often said I don't understand if the people that some of the larger accounts, let's just say on X, some of the larger accounts on X have massive amounts of people following them. And supposedly a lot of these people are helping children and helping families. But why in the world aren't they talking about this? I mean, I have my suspicions.
Well, they're not. And what they're doing, well, I'll let you continue in a second, but they're not. And what they're doing is actually taking survivors and victims and advocates intellectual property. They're sharing it like it's general information. They're making thousands of dollars off of it while we can't even feed ourselves or house ourselves. Go ahead.
No, that's so well said. All right, Megan. Well, let's segue over to this video that Lynn's found. This was when your dad had a talk show. I believe it was in the early 2000s or late 90s, somewhere in that time frame. It was on NBC, and it was kind of, I don't know, would you compare it to kind of like a glorified Maury Povich type show? I don't know if maybe that's the best analogy.
It literally, sorry guys, we have a new kitten. I was saying, sorry, we have a new kitten. So if I go on and off, I'm just dealing with the kitten. Or if you hear her in the background, she's so
now
cute.
Everybody's going to want to see the kitten.
Everybody, we have a new baby.
I know, right?
Okay, maybe by the end of the show, I'll go. I will. I'll go grab her. Now I forgot because she's so cute. What were you saying?
I was talking about Dad's show. Was it kind of like Maury Povich? I mean, it seems like that to me.
Yeah.
The few episodes.
Yeah, it was this glorified Maury Povich, Montel Williams, whatever, something show. So speaking of Kamala, oops, sorry. I mean, I digress. So anyways, Yeah, he had this talk show, which not only, so this we'll watch this clip, but also I want to remind people that on his talk show, he actually had the Raelians and Clonade on his show. And because I'm the conspiracy theorist, right? Not him whatsoever. It's me. So all right. But he had Clonade on, which actually started in the Bahamas. So where my father was already working on Paradise Island, casinos and hotels, and the Out Island Board, bringing conventions of people back and forth from the States. It's also where Nygaard from Epstein, if people are familiar with Nygaard, he was down there. Gosh, I wish I'd have pulled that video, but there's a video of him and his partner, and they're down there grooming Bahamian women to basically be breeders, and telling them that if they get an abortion, it's even better because the umbilical cord blood and for the stem cells, and how much more money they'll get paid for it. And you should see the look on these women's faces. I think they're literally in shock at what they're sitting. And these guys are just talking about like it's normal. These women are going to be doing such a service for humanity. I mean, the manipulation, it's propaganda. We don't understand. The National Center for Missing Exploited Children, CPS, everything that they put out, it takes a village. There's all these children, thousands of children that need loving homes and need to be adopted. This is not true. This is all propaganda. And we need to start understanding what child protection propaganda is, because it is rampant. I mean, it's almost everything we've been fed in America. So we have to be looking at that. We have to delineate. I mean, I'm going to be a broken record at some point. I know I already am, so I apologize, but it just couldn't be driven home more. We have to understand what that is. And so Clonade, he's got Nygaard, he's got, which is, he doesn't have, excuse me, he's got Clonade on, which is connected ultimately to Nygaard. Again, another Epstein connection going on, and this eugenics, stem cell. I mean, people don't understand. My father, all growing up, is very concerned with what was it, human growth hormones, and extending life, and always being healthy, and going in for these executive checkups. I mean, we had the AARP article where he went to Mayo for deep brain stimulation procedures. These people, it's a transhumanist agenda. It's I want to live forever. It's people that don't love themselves because they don't know or love God. And so they think that they are gods, and they want to become, I mean, Elon is the main proponent for it. He's doing boring tunnels under us, and he's creating Neuralink under the guise of to help Parkinson's. It's not, we have to again start understanding and look, even if we're looking at something that seems so great, what does it hurt to shift for a split second and say what could be the nefarious side of this?
I agree. I always say I'm on no team except Team Jesus. That's my team. That one will never change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Amen.
So when I'm on that team, I know the truth. I can delineate. I can decipher. I can use the God-given gifts he's given me to look at things and subject it to this scrutiny or this scrutiny and figure out what I believe is truth. Have I been wrong? Of course I've been wrong. We're all going to be wrong at some point. But it's such a great point, Meghan, that we have to don't go on that Titanic while it's sinking. I mean, you could look at it off and say, wow, what a beautiful ship, but let it sink, for crying out loud. Why do we got to get on board? Like, I'm not part of the Republicans or Democrats. There's one particular party I've never voted for, I will admit that. but I'm going to say I'm not, there's no R next to my name. There's no D next to my name. Like, it's like, are you standing on truth,
Right.
or are you not? And are you trying to suppress truth? I mean, that's what we're really up against, the suppression of truth. So to me, that's the greater argument that we're up against, or war we're in as people of this great country. Actually, the whole world. It's not just here, but obviously we're American citizens, so it matters to us.
For sure.
Our freedoms matter, and especially to families.
For sure.
All right, so Meghan, so this clip.
And I think
Oh, go
that,
ahead.
I
Sorry.
think that this clip, yeah, sorry. No, we just said the same thing. I think that this clip is a good, I think that that's a good segue into this clip, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because, here we have this clip that, let's just pay attention to the dynamic going on here in this clip between John Walsh, the panel that he has, the one individual that, you know, they're focusing on for this show, and then they're bringing in the experts, which is a whole other thing. That's how they're kidnapping kids in court, by the way, is expert witnesses, contracted experts to come in that don't know you, don't know anything about you, but they're going to make these assumptions. They're going to say these seemingly educated, you know, assessments of what's going on, and it's all a load of BS. And so, yeah, I think this clip is very interesting that that Lindsay found, especially with what we know now with Crime Con, and you know, looking at the history of America's Most Wanted with Rupert Murdoch and Fox Network, and a push for police state and fear mongering the public so that we create this propaganda, which is an idolizing of police and giving them this authority that, you know, they're above us and we shouldn't question them, and, you know, this, that, and the other. So I think that this is a good example to see kind of what am I trying to say here, Jan? Like a framing, if you will, or a way that this kind of transpires in one respect, if you will.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's like framing something to make it into something that it's really not, to create more fear or drive people to start thinking like, wow, what's society coming to? And it's, I don't know. Well, you'll understand once you watch the clip. So let's just go to that.
Yeah.
I'd ask you a question. I can't help it. I heard you say you don't think you're hurting anybody. It's not your business. You don't care. I've been in prison. I see how easy the time these guys do. They get cigarettes. They got color TV. Meanwhile, our children are in the grave. And it just kills me to think that you paid money for Otis Toole's paintings so that that creep could buy cigarettes. That doesn't bother you?
I don't think it's right, but
I don't think it's right because you don't have a heart.
I do it anyway.
Do you have a heart? Does that heart somewhere beating in you? If you had, then you feel like you feel the pain other people feel. It's
Joe, you don't seem to think without people like you who are on the outside living amongst us, this industry does not exist. Plain and simple.
Who's that
My brother do not have a voice.
You perpetrate the industry. And I find you equally as egregious as the killers themselves because you're living amongst them.
You want to be a part of their item. You want to be a part of their world. You want to be a part. You want to see it on the wall. You want to adore it as if they did something so great that you want to be a. I mean, put something positive on your wall. Look at.
I got to ask you something. When they interviewed the Hillside Strangler, he said in many depositions, he killed lots of women, that he got pleasure out of watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which taught him how to truss up women with coat hangers. And you said that you actually enjoy this stuff? You think there's something wrong with you, Joe? I really think there's something wrong with you, big time.
It's a hobby?
Big time.
You think it's a hobby?
All right.
Do you have the kids?
I
Do you
was
have
just
family?
curious, Joe, since what age have you been collecting this
18.
memorabilia? Or murderabilia?
18.
You know, when they interviewed me for this, they asked me the worst part about this, who I thought was the worst of the people who did this. Was it the people who committed the crimes, the sellers, or the people that bought it? And I told them, without a doubt, it's the people that bought it. Because they're our neighbors, our co-workers, they go to church with us, and we're at the grocery store with them. And we have no idea who they are. You're almost as bad as the person that commits the crime, except you hadn't done it yet. You're going to do it. No. You don't do this, and you don't, and go on with a normal life.
There's nothing fun about it. There's nothing fun about it. If you think it's a game.
It's not funny. I mean, you're trying so hard not to quit and start laughing. It's not funny.
I'm not trying to laugh now. No, I'm not.
Thank you. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. My question is actually for Joe. What is the most that you've ever paid for one of these pieces of articles? Excuse me?
$75.
$75.
Yeah, you know what? You ought to donate it for a home for abused and molested children, Joe. You know, that's what you ought to do.
Oh, really?
First of all, I want to thank you for the work that you've done. I'm so impressed that you're able to actually be in the same room with this young man up there that I feel very sorry for. I feel like that you're sending your life in the wrong direction, and there's something along the way where you need some counseling and you need some help. Because there's so many things you can do with your life. There's so many things you can do. You know, we only go around once. We only go around once. And just out of respect for John Walsh and all the wonderful things that he's done for our country, he's changed the way that we find the bad people in our country. And he's put them behind bars. And you could definitely turn your life around as young as you are at this point and really make some very positive changes in our country along the side.
Thank you for the nice comments.
With high inflation.
Well, that didn't look.
I'm just gonna.
That didn't look scripted at all. Sorry.
No, not scripted at all. She didn't say when they asked me beforehand about this, this is what I answered. I mean, they're picking these experts that are going to go along with what they're saying. They divvied this up 3 against 1 with a whole audience of a peanut gallery. John Walsh, if you look at his face, it is so wild to watch him go, like, told you, what do you think about this? You know, got you, you know, it's so scripted. It's insane. And what I wanted to say first before anything else about this is this clip we just watched is coming from a guy that started the Crime and Punishment Museum in Washington, D.C., which was nothing but filled with crime memorabilia. He made up murderabilia with his partner, and it went under. So what are we talking about?
Oh, I don't even know how to react to that. Oh my gosh. Like, it's just beyond imagination.
I mean, the hypocrisy is thick, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? That last lady that was talking to the young man up there, she says she thanks your dad for changing the way things are done here in this country now. How long ago was that? 20-something years ago she said that? I wonder if she still agrees with that. If she still
I'm sure she does. I mean,
Rest
most of my dad has spent 40, bless her heart. My dad has spent 40 plus years and paid well to groom the public as well as law enforcement. I mean, he is an idol to law enforcement, to the agencies, to all of this. And they use him as this puppet. Look, there's no questions asked when it comes to John Walsh. And that's because of that emotional manipulation. She just said it right there. We just witnessed one example of what is said all the time to my father. You know, you changed how this happened. One person changed. No, it wasn't one person. He had a whole arsenal behind him. It was already there in place. The legislation was already being shopped. America's Most Wanted was already being shopped. It didn't have anything. John Walsh did not create America's Most Wanted. Rupert Murdoch created Crime Watch UK and then brought it to America when Fox was a fledgling network. It was about to go under, and it was a fledgling network. And so Rupert Murdoch needed to push America's Most Wanted in America. It brought the network back, and it also had a huge impact on the public to fearmonger the public and create this propaganda that I brought up before, elevating law enforcement, this authority, and putting emphasis on it and glamorizing it so that we're these meek peasant folk that need, these authorities over us. And I'm not saying that, again, that we don't need police. This isn't black and white. It's just, we have to understand what the manipulation is, what the paid opposition is towards this police state that they are trying, with data. We've talked about many times about Hank Asher and TLO and, the voter registration and the databases and everything that is now controlling and enslaving our society. And that is a big proponent because of Hank Asher, who himself is John Walsh's best friend, they know each other from the Bahama days where Hank Asher was an ex-Iran-Contra drug smuggler. So why, again, are all these people having some kind of sexual deviance or past of drug smuggling or trafficking or some nefarious aspect, that are now the authorities over, things like our children or the data over us or any of that? Talk about election fraud. Go ahead.
Yeah, no kidding. The thing that always struck me about your dad is how he was just made for TV. Like that, not many people can just go in front of a camera and be a natural, right? And I always think back to this picture, Meghan. I don't know who took this picture. Now, how long after Adam's disappearance was this, would you say, if you had to guess?
It's like the weeks that they're searching for him, I believe. This is from.
So who is taking a picture behind the cameraman of your dad posing, looking good, by the way? He's got the shirt button and
great.
the collar and sleeves rolled up like he's going to work.
Yeah.
He
used to call this Jim Morrison style.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I just think when you look at him hosting that show and he's just kind of walking around the crowd, working the room, and then, like you said, the expression on his face. You look back to even like the beginning of America's Most Wanted. I think recently I watched like the very first premiere, the episode that started it all in '85. And even then it was like he was already polished. Or you look at him when he's trying to get legislation passed with Reagan and the Bushes and stuff. And it just always looks very put together. And for me, I mean, and I'm not saying this, not everybody handles things the same way. So I can't paint with a broad brush, but I would say most people that would have their son taken in that respect, the way it was told to us, I always find that very peculiar. At the time I did, and I was a young guy, and I just thought, this is a horrible story. I can't believe this is happening. That, God bless this man for standing up and saving us all. But in hindsight, you look back and you're like, man, I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, did ever, like, when you were living with him, did you see the polished John Walsh? Like, was there this, like, was it two different personalities? Was he the same guy all the time? Just, I don't know. It just makes me, I'm very suspicious.
I have to say that versus, I have to say, like, versus other celebrities and stuff, like the father of my son, right? The best friend of Kanye West. That was very obvious. Like those people, and I don't think people think about it, but it is pretty obvious. Like when you have rappers or talent that have a name, really dough or whatever, but then they call it their government name, right? They've got like P. Diddy is Sean Combs, right? So these are two different entities basically. And I always gave my father credit for, being pretty authentic between the two. Like what you saw in public was what I saw at home in a certain respect, right? Like to a certain degree. But then, as I've talked about many times here, is that public persona versus private life. We also have a Globe cover of my dad. We have an ex-mistress that had to go to a women's shelter for safety and to have restraining orders filed against my father because she was in fear of her life. She used to be a Hollywood producer, actually. She wasn't just some random woman. And he had a double life. So my father, and we've heard since with the Yeshua case and allegations that, my father's had a relationship with Pamela Robertson, who was involved in trafficking Yeshua. This has been something that I grew up with my entire life behind closed doors was, putting my baby brother down for a nap and catching my dad on the phone with his mistress and literally picking up the phone and telling her to get off the phone when I'm like 14, 15 years old, or my father on my 21st birthday going and announcing on Larry King Live that he's a sex addict, stuff like that. So it's in plain sight, but then no one wants to put that together and think, wow, John Walsh could be this great person. But if I wasn't on his side, what could be the nefarious side? Like, what could he do? He's got every three-letter agency. He's got this power. He controls narratives. He was sued. There was a huge lawsuit by an inmate that actually sued my father for saying in the public on one of the platforms or a show or something that this guy had snitched, basically was a snitch. My dad labeled him a snitch, knowing what happens to snitches in jail. And the guy never snitched. He was not a snitch. And he sued my father for endangering his life, for saying these things. My father was just last week, there was a lot of hype on local channels in upstate New York because there's a senator running. It's Brian or Brandon Williams, something like that. And my father endorsed him, just like he endorsed the sheriff that's participating, Eric Flowers, and doing all this with him to me and my children. He endorsed the senator in a New York ad campaign, and he said, I'm John Walsh, we're tough on crime. Now he's under some, conservative label. My father's not a Republican. He's registered independent, by the way, and that's, so he can flip-flop on what he needs to do. And basically everyone, it was actually great because the people in New York that saw this ad played over and over again actually spoke up, and they said, how is John Walsh saying, I'm endorsing this guy, I'm going to vote for this guy, when he's registered to vote in Florida? He's not even registered in New York to vote at all. Then they had to have a press conference where the guy comes forward and says, oh, John Walsh says that he misspoke and he apologizes. And then the local news a few days later covers it again because they're saying they're getting calls in asking, why is this ad still being circulated? In the press conference, the guy's asked, and he's like, oh yeah, we're going to do something about it. We're going to take it down. And it's so disingenuous. It's insane. And they have to cover it, like I said, a few days later, because people are like, why is this still being circulated, this ad? And not just on local ads, but they said that it's being circulated on like the Super Bowl and different like big platform exposure, right? And so they were having a problem with it. But for John Walsh to be able to just say, oh, I misspoke and I'm sorry. Well, is that what you did in Florida, John Walsh? Did you misspeak at my trial to take my children the entire time? Because it sounds, that would be maybe the only way you'd be able to get out of it, is say, oh, I misspoke for 2 years, trafficking my daughter's children and lying under oath, perjuring myself, witness tampering, threatening and retaliating, conspiring with local law enforcement and administration, as well as state administration, to do this. So I'm wondering if, maybe we'll see John Walsh. I'm being sarcastic, guys. It'll never happen. But, point's sake is that what happened in Florida? This seems to be a theme with John Walsh. And that's something that you asked behind the scenes. That was something that really
Kamala Harris
me about my father. I love my father so much, and I respected him my entire life. He was my world. Okay. He was my everything. But then when I would start seeing him constantly just white lie so easily to get his way, it's really just to get his way. And he doesn't care what he says to do that. And it's been, in a position that he's in, that's a very concerning trait to have, I guess, to put it gracefully.
Right. I have that clip if you want to play it, his endorsement. You want to play it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
Why America's Most Wanted. Good evening, I'm Jeff Kulikowski. Christie's off tonight. People are asking the Your Stories team why America's Most Wanted host John Walsh is still appearing in an ad in which he admittedly tells us he misspoke. Tonight, News Channel 9's Andrew Donovan taking these voters' concerns right to the candidate who approved it.
Tonight, America's most dangerous criminals.
More than 72 hours after America's Most Wanted host John Walsh admitted that he, quote, misspoke in a campaign commercial.
I'm voting for Brandon Williams.
Committing to voting in the 22nd District, despite being registered elsewhere.
I'm voting for Brandon Williams.
Voters are asking why the ad is still running, and in some very prominent places, like during high-rated NFL broadcasts.
Good morning.
At an event touting an endorsement from the Syracuse Police Union, we asked the congressman.
He compared himself briefly to Tim Walsh, that maybe he should have used a different word. But I got to tell you, John Walsh has voted with his feet. He's voted with his reputation. He's voted with his time because he cares deeply about children and about the lawlessness that's taking over our country. So I'm very proud to have John Walsh's endorsement.
In a statement to News Channel 9 Friday, Walsh did endorse Williams. But to vote in the 22nd District, Walsh would have to give up his registration in Indian River County, Florida, and not send back a Florida ballot already mailed to him. Walsh could still register in New York through this Saturday.
Do you plan on adjusting the ad to accurately use words from him instead of voting for you?
Yes, yeah, we'll certainly try to do that and see if he's got availability to help us make that. But that, I don't think anybody's concerned about, is it endorsed or vote? I think people actually have so much respect for John Walsh and the service that he's done for children that I think people get the message.
The Williams campaign manager says the ad runs one more day.
I'm voting for Brandon Williams.
There's no indication it's coming down early.
I'm Brandon Williams, and I approve this message.
In Syracuse, Andrew Donovan, News Channel 9.
Friday,
Well, that's very interesting.
I want to say, I want to say that this Miss ad has a script. It had writers. It had meetings. It had a budget. It had all of that. So that was a misspeak at the last minute. Is that what we're is that what we're buying here? Is that what I'm picking up? What they're putting down? And then you got to love that he's endorsed by the police force. They make sure to say, and then he deflects off of, yes, we'll try to see if he has time. But I think more importantly, it's who John Walsh is, blah, blah, blah. And, I just want to point those things out. That's all. And the predictive programming here, or the media narrative here to pull out, is that America has become lawless. This is John Walsh's new messaging, and how it's become so lawless. Well, how did that happen? Again, Hegelian dialect. You're going to create something with your buddy Biden and Harris and Obama and all of them that we know you've been seen with and we've shown. And then, you just have this lawlessness that now we have to, now you have to put it on us, right? As the public, right? So there's all this lawlessness. So America's Most Wanted needs to come back. There needs to be heavier policing, all these different things. We need to be very weary of the police state. Maybe I'm not putting enough emphasis on that, but this whole police state concept, this is what the goal is towards for this, with this messaging.
The other part that I was thinking of is he's the law guy enforcing law around this country of ours, and he doesn't know the voting rules. So, I mean, to me, it's just like skirting the issue. They're just trying to we'll just push this away. Like someone actually caught on and said, wait a minute, that's breaking the law. You can't do that. I find that kind of like a bitter irony.
Yeah, Yeah, and furthermore to that, they said on the clip, unless he goes and registers in New York before voting and doesn't vote on his mail-in vote for Florida. So somebody in comments, I did say, so we're already talking about election fraud here? What are we doing? The comments were, I was actually really proud of the comments for people to speak up and, say something about it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I thought that was interesting for sure. So, all right, Meghan, it doesn't, I was looking to see if Lynn's texted us, but I don't think so. No. So
no, I think she's busy tonight. Why don't we go over the two tweets from Shannon? Everyone please go over. Gino will pull up Shannon's page so you can see her handle. Go over and follow her, please. She's a smaller account, but she has incredible threads of research on all of this, way in depth. We're trying to get her on. She's so busy. She goes in incognito and then puts out these 30, point threads that are just absolutely amazing. So this one she put out here, guys, it's SCH96305 is her handle on X. And here's her latest one about Bush and the Nazi dealings, which then ultimately, it's an amazing thread. I encourage everyone to go read through it. It would take us too long to do it here tonight. So we're going to pull out one or two of the points that pertain to the National Center and to John Walsh. But please go through. I think it's so important to understand the history of how we got to where we are today when we're talking about these issues. We have to understand how we got here. And that does reveal the players and the nefarious nature and, activities and things that we are trying to address. So I think it's pretty integral. Go ahead. You want to pull up her
Yeah.
tweet to the
Yeah.
NCMEC one.
Yep, got it right here.
Sorry, my nose is driving me nuts tonight,
Yeah.
guys. Sorry.
So she says in January 2005, 53 companies gave the maximum of $250,000 donation towards President Bush's inauguration. 6 of those companies were also NCMEC donors. If you don't know what NCMEC is, that's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. AT&T, 2010 NCMEC donor. Bristol Myers Squibb, 2009 NCMEC donor. And Ford, a 2004 to 2006 NCMEC donor. You got, well, how about Pfizer? Pfizer's in there for 2011.
Yeah.
Susan and Michael Dell Foundation, 2004 to 2005. Oh, Time Warner, another favorite, 2004 to 2007. She's got the link to the NECMAR donor database, includes links of archived websites. So let's check this out.
Where you'll also find Les Wexner through L Brands. Here's in the middle column, 1, 2, 3, 4 down is now on the right. So 4 down is LexisNexis. That's Hank Asher right there. Let's look and see who else. There's Dell right underneath. Honeywell is below as well. That's a big one. There's Walmart stores with their Walmart walls. We've got Polaroid at the bottom and Radio Shack in the middle. I mean, over on the left, we've got, again, LexisNexis. We've got MS. Is that, sorry, MSNE? Is that what's underneath it? Sorry, I can't see on the. We have Yahoo, again, Walmart. I mean, these are huge corporations. Hewlett Packard, Ford Motor. I mean, all of these people and the corporations really is what's donating, and then who are the people in these corporations. She also posted last week or the week before the P. Diddy Clive Davis connections, where we have Viacom and Warner Brothers donating to the center as well. So the question becomes, when we're looking at the players, here's Amtrak. Is this a pay to play situation? Is that what we're trying to get at here?
Right.
So,
right. And on the outside,
Limited Brands Inc. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're an outsider and you don't know any of this, you're like, wow, that's really nice of these companies to give so much money to such a wonderful cause.
Right. I mean, I even found on one of them the Epstein Foundation. So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. Kodak, Life Touch will be on here. I mean, it's just incredible to see the affiliated companies and also all of these companies that are donating. We also have like Lockheed Martin, and we haven't even talked about, what is it? Sidley Austin law firm representing the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children internationally. So an American domestic law firm representing the National Center internationally. For those that, are into that stuff, they've heard Sidley Austin before. It's also where Obama and Michelle met, and also where Vance worked as well in his early career.
That's a pretty big list.
I think there's another. Yeah, that's only part of it. I think that there's another in that thread of Shannon's. I think there's another post about it, maybe underneath it or so. There's one more, I think, about John Walsh for the National Center.
So she's got a video here, just like Skull and Bones. Initiations are probably nothing. Hold on, let's see if there's more statistics. This is a really good thread. Gosh, you could spend 2 shows on this.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Shannon does great work.
Yeah.
Shannon, I've never spoken to you or DM'd you or anything, but you do amazing work. Keep it up, girl. You're awesome. Meghan, I don't see another one in this.
She does. And she's also a huge. She's a huge voice for victims survivors too. I just want to say that she's an incredible
Yes.
person. Okay, well, if there's not, there's Ford Motors. There you go. Okay, so if not, then that's fine. Did you see on her page, if you pull it up, leave it up and go to her main page and see if you can scroll down to see where she highlighted, I think it was last week or so, she highlighted the Diddy donors. And while you do that, I'll go get Willow so we can see her before the show ends.
Oh, here. Well, here's Raytheon. It says, according to NCMEC website archives, Raytheon was a corporate friend of NCMEC from 2007 to 2009. Corporate friends donate between $20,000 to $49.99. Of course, that's on the low end. If you're rich enough to donate $500,000 and above, you can be in the children's leadership. Yeah, and then there's an archive for that. Let's see if...
Also, Backpage was involved with the National Center. Ernie Allen defended them and was in the case for Backpage, which was the platform like proven to be trafficking.
Jay Stevens was the U.S. Attorney for D.C., whose office oversaw the corrupt grand jury that covered up the activities of Craig Spence. Activities like pandering children and adults, blackmailing, etc. Spence and Larry King were best buds in the pedophile business, opening companies by the names of Bodies by God, Dream Boys, and Man to Man. Now, I'm going to take this opportunity to clarify the fact that the North American Man-Boy Lover Association, NAMBLA, or Club PED, is very real and has been around since 1978. Anyway, from 1997 to 2001, Stevens was a corporate vice president and deputy general counsel for Honeywell. In 2001, Stevens was appointed U.S. Associate Attorney General by GWB. In September of 2002, Stevens resigned and became vice president of Raytheon in October 2002 until 2015. He's currently a lawyer for Kirkland and Ellis. A few other details on Raytheon, the fifth largest defense contractor in the world, involved in Promise software development, the purchasing of drug trafficker E-Systems, and flights for Saudi royalty tech contractor for YEA. Did you want to touch on that, Megan?
No, but Saudi is going to come up a lot in the future, guys. Just get ready.
Mm-hmm. HARP can do seven things or more: generate an EMP to disable electronic devices, improve submarine communications, more flexible and accurate radar, disrupt enemy communications while maintaining ours, earth-penetrating radar for finding hidden installations, finding oil, gas, and mineral deposits, detection. I think that was supposed to be oil, sorry. My eyes are bad. There are just the publicly stated capabilities. E-Systems is part of the central nervous systems for the nation's intelligence community, with nearly 90% of $2 billion in sales and classified projects. Most of these projects were for the NSA and CIA, while the employees are often former agency officials. Raytheon purchased E-Systems for $2.3 billion and holds at least 12 patents related to HARP. E-Systems was the most secretive company in the U.S., and after the sale, its details are even more shrouded in mystery. A few other details on Honeywell. The United States Environmental Protection Agency states that no corporation has been linked to a greater number of Superfund toxic waste sites than Honeywell, criticized for spending $18.3 million on the lobbying and not paying any taxes during 2008 to 2010, instead getting $34 million in tax rebates, despite making a profit of $4.9 billion, laying off 968 workers since 2008, and increasing the executive pay by 15% to $54.2 million in 2010 for its top 5 executives. On March 10th, 2013...
Wait, real quick.
Yep.
Wait. Before you go
ahead.
on, real quick, just take that off so I can show, and then I'll put the kitten back because she's feisty.
Awesome.
We can go back to it. All right, here's Willow, the feisty baby. I'm kidding. Where is she? Can you see? She's like, let me down. Look at your face. There's your face. So there's Willow,
cute.
Guys. Sorry, she's
Awesome.
she's little. So she's on the go. Oh, you see her face? There's
How
my
old is
baby.
she?
She's little.
Couple weeks?
She's like a couple weeks. Yeah, she just got like okayed to, leave the mommy. So we're doing it together. She's so sweet. All right, go back to it. She was just whining, so I didn't want to keep her too long. Go ahead.
So she's got this. Let's see here. Extensions of remarks. Nope, that's not what we wanted. Okay. There simply is no other reason to have this many photo partners, and yes, it Advanced Polybag is a plastic bag making company who donated 30 grand to NCMEC in 2004 and 2005, along with several other companies, of which were involved in horrific abuses, including child sex abuse. So it says, gives NCMEC a law enforcement officials indispensable leads, resulting in the return of hundreds of children. Here we go, Meghan. The return of hundreds of children each year. To learn more about becoming a national partner, photo partner, call 1-800-THE-LOST. So this is what we were talking about earlier. Supposedly, all these hundreds of missing children are found, but we never hear anything about them, ever.
Yeah, also all the Amber Alerts that are canceled or recalled, we never hear about that either, do we? But they get that funding in the stats.
It says, based on NCMEC sponsor donation archives from 2004 to 2012, NetJets was a NCMEC sponsor in 2004. According to Wikipedia, NetJets was founded as Executive Jet Airways in 1964. It was later renamed Executive Jet Aviation in 2002. Let's see. In 1984, Executive Jet Aviation was purchased by mathematician and former Goldman Sachs executive Richard Santoli, who owned a business that leased helicopters to service providers offshore oil operations. It launched its fractional ownership business in 1986. In July 1998, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, Inc. announced that it was buying NetJets for $725 million in stock and cash. Buffett had been NetJets' customer since 1995. Lawrence King of the Franklin pedophile ring just so happened to be on a frequent flyer of NetJets too, back when it was Executive Jet Aviation, EGA. Here's one of his flight logs. There are 128 of these. Human Resource Counseling. You see that, Mercer? Human Resource Consulting. Oh my gosh. Well, so let me go back. Okay, this one. So in 2004, Greyhound was a corporate sponsor of NCMEC. Oh boy, Greyhound, Meghan.
Great.
Greyhound is also a NCMEC community partner. Greyhound Leasing owns Southern Air Transport, a CIA proprietary. 08 Foxtrot, as well as several other planes used by Barry Seal, were in reality owned by the same company revealed in 1998 bankruptcy proceedings to have owned the notorious CIA airline Southern Air Transport. Congressional and public records from the era established Southern Air as a legendary CIA proprietary, second only to Air America, and is being connected to Secord, Singlaub, Rodriguez, Casey, and George H.W. Bush. Side note, Flynn is connected to Singlaub. Is that how you say it? Singlaubs? Never heard of it. Via America's Future with Singlaub, naming Flynn chairman in April 2021. Among its long list of dubious achievements, Southern Air had owned the C-123 used by Seal in the Nicaragua sting operation, which made Barry Seal famous. That same aircraft was later shot down over Nicaragua in '86, and the lone survivor, Eugene Hasenfuss, was captured alive by Sandinista soldiers. That is what started the Iran-Contra scandal to begin with. No one knew or admitted knowing just who owned Southern Air Transport back in 1986, although government officials all swore up and down that it wasn't the CIA. Southern Air's ownership by Greyhound Leasing, which became the entity called Finova, was only disclosed after no one was looking, when SAT went into bankruptcy in 1998. This is the first time the holding company, Finova, has been revealed for what is clearly an agency front, set up in Arizona and headquartered in Canada to escape American financial disclosure requirements.
There's the money flows to Flynn family. Oh, with Mary O'Neill right at the top, of course.
So tax filings show America's future paid members of the Flynn family more than 510,000 combined in 2021 and 2022. Mary O'Neill was paid $200,000 during the period, including $148,300.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Wow. Oh, Nilly.
Oh, Shannon.
Yeah, I
Shannon.
think that, you know, the big lesson here and what she's pointing out, and people, again, we encourage people to go read deeper into that stuff. She lays it out very well. We're not asking you to research yourself. We're just saying, look at it. But again, as I was saying earlier, it's looking at these companies and then seeing who's behind the companies, right? Who are these individuals? What are their affiliations? How did these companies, you know, change hands or names? You know, organizations, working with organizations, different things like that. There's always vested interest.
Right. Yeah, it's follow the money. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah,
it
is. Yeah, so, all right. Well, I think we'll bring more next week, and hopefully soon, guys. I have a big announcement coming soon that, well, I guess I'll do it now, but I'm setting up my own locals channel, and hopefully that'll be a great outlet for me to get more information out, as well as to provide for myself and everything. I know we've got a lot of grifters, and a lot has been, you know, kind of played out with online platforms and paywalls and everything by influencers. But the real devastation there has been that, you know, survivors and victims and advocates, you know, that's what we need. We need online platforms. We need people subscribing. We need people, you know, to spread the information, as well as so that we can, again, provide for ourselves and take care of ourselves. And so it becomes a different situation that I hope people can kind of, you know, get better at delineating, and really, again, finding people to support. That's the exercise and the muscle that we need to start, you know, bringing back from atrophy, if you will, on how to support your fellow man. You know, everyone's struggling at this time, but really to, you know, look at those, you know, subscriptions or monthly donations that you do, and see really where you're allocating your money. And if you could, you know, do that in a different way, money being support or whatever you're doing, you know, it's not just about money, it's about resources. It's about, you know, how do we come together as a community? How do we support each other? If you have a small business, there's victims, survivors, and advocates that need work, like myself. There's, you know, there's things that maybe your small business creates that you could donate and would help, you know, somebody's effort. You know, there's so many different ways that we can help each other without, you know, we're all seeing that with the storms and everything, and prayers go out to everyone that's been affected by the storms and had their lives, you know, torn apart and everything taken and lost. So we have to start understanding, how can we come together and how can we handle things, because we are much more effective than a federal government. And you know, and our tax money can be going to way more effective ways to actually be protecting children, to actually be changing things in our society, and again, creating those better ways that I always try to talk about, or interject there, just that notion in itself that there are better ways for us to be doing these things. And that takes us coming together and supporting each other and everything like that. So in my long-winded tangent, I will be starting my locals hopefully in the next 2 weeks or so. I'm going to do like an announcement early so that you can sign up before I start releasing things. And if you sign up and subscribe, I'll be releasing a few little things here and there before the actual launch. I plan on having 3 shows on there. The Meghan Walsh podcast is going to be my main focus, and that's really going to be talking about healing in better ways. We've talked about this kind of stuff for 3.5, going on 4 years, and it's time for us to digest this and understand so that we can be moving into better ways and positive ways of healing and living. We've got the health and food issues, we've got child protection, we've got, how we're interacting with politics and what that means to society, this, that, and the other. And so I think that it's time for us to really be shifting into positive things and solutions, right? We've been screaming, if child trafficking ended today, what have we as Americans done to set up support for that, for the families and the children that could be being reunited right now through the adoption records? I mean, there aren't all these missing children. We know where they are. We can be returning them. We could be reuniting families, and we could be having a huge positive, movement in our society. Not that kind of movement, but this forward movement as a society and a consciousness on, we've done this, we've ended this, we're returning the children, and we're proactively coming up together with ways to handle this better in the future, for the future of our society and for our children. So, we talk about the border, we talk about 325,000 children, we talk about 800,000 children a year within America. Well, CPS has over 7 million of our children, okay, in a year. I put that up in the statistics and everything on my page. Everyone can go over to X, Meghan Walsh _. I put that up. We currently have, I forget the number, but it's well over either of those other two numbers of children that were removed in a year from their families. And then within the system, again, that's 7 million plus children right now. So we already have state-raised children. It doesn't take a village. That's a Hillary Clinton, Margaret Sanger propaganda script that they've given the public to make this okay. And adoption is the selling of our children. The removals by CPS are kidnappings of our children. This is direct violation of any civil rights, liberty rights, constitutional rights, any rights you want to put the name, the label on. It's in direct violation of all of that. And at this point, I want the public to understand that at this point, we have every state has federally kidnapped and trafficked children, which by law, if that was being followed and the American people are the ones that are supposed to hold that to the fire, that would call for the immediate halt of all operations and funding of all CPS in any states that have violated, which again, every state. This is in your county, everybody. This is not something removed from you. This is happening by the hour as we're talking. Okay. And we need to really start to understand that and break that down and start to get involved. I did a workshop. Gino knows Hunting the Hunters. We've done a workshop. Maybe we'll re-release that, or maybe I'll put that up for free on my locals for subscribers. If you subscribe, I'll send it to you for free on how you can literally just research your local community to identify that child trafficking racket. And then we have to start coming up with, what do we do about that? How do we hold these people accountable? We look at immunity, but when people are committing crimes, immunity is null and void by law. So there's different things that we need to be looking at and really get diligent and put our foot down to end this once and for all, because it could end in a day. I mean, it should, again, already be halted by law. All operations should be stopped by law. And I don't think that the people understand that and know that, or I think more would be calling for it. So maybe I could offer that information as we end our show tonight. But I want to thank everyone for joining us. As always, please share this out. Again, please hit the like, subscribe. It really helps us. And we need that to get the information out. We don't care about numbers, but we want this information to get out. So please start those conversations in your friend groups or in your community or, whatnot. Start gathering together and let this be an exciting and positive thing. I mean, this is incredible that we know who are the main, child traffickers in our country. We know an agency that's doing it. We know how to identify the people. And at this point, if you're a social worker or you're a judge or a GAL, you are guilty at this point. You can't claim ignorance anymore. You can't claim your, saviorism in the community. You don't get that anymore. You are part of the problem. You are the procurers. You are the low hanging fruit. You're the freaking peons for rapists, for child rapists. Okay. So if you're still going about this and you still want to grab your chest and you still want to act like you're saving children, you are a farce. You are a criminal and you are a child trafficker. So my suggestion is to come forward now before it's too late and say, you know what, and we've had great, amazing people come forward. So I'm saying this not in vain. We've had amazing people come forward and CPS workers and all sorts of people come forward and say, we are sick of what we're seeing in this. We're sick of what we're being bullied to do, what we're threatened to do, and it's time. So, if I can offer that as well, if you're involved in it, because it is going to be hard for people moving forward to start realizing that some of these people might be your sister, might be your aunt, it might be your best friend, it might be you. You might be a social worker and say, I got into this thinking I was helping kids. But at this point, if you're still in denial about that and what it is, then again, you're complacent, you're aiding and abetting, and you are part of the criminal aspect of this, of child trafficking in America.
Meghan, I meant to add earlier about a couple of videos I had recently watched about, and it's basically recruitment videos for social workers. And I got to tell you, the first 10 minutes or so of the videos, I didn't hear one thing about helping families. It was about how much money you're going to make, stipends, possible gas money, all these other like incentives to be a social worker. And I'm like, wait a minute. They're not even talking about healing families or helping families get through maybe a difficult time. If mom or dad happens to be on drugs or something like that. It was all about the money and what a wonderful career you could make of it.
Yeah,
now, we know the career is very short for a social worker because I think most of them, the conscience finally gets to them. They realize what's going on here. Yeah.
Yes. Or they try to speak up and they get fired or retaliate against. I mean, that's very real. But it also is the same goes for foster parent. The CPS system has groomed the public. Okay, they've groomed the public, like you're saying. It's all about the incentives. It's about what you have, and even towards foster parents now, it's the fast track for adoption. If you can't afford to adopt, if you don't want to wait that long to adopt, they now incentivize you to become a foster parent, where then these children are placed. And I mean, we were posting last year every single day foster parents being arrested for abuse to the foster children. These aren't their real children, and a lot of people are collecting a check off. They're stacking homes with foster kids to collect these checks, and then the caregiver, and actually it shouldn't be foster mom or dad. These are not moms or dads. These are caregivers. This is the appropriate name to be giving them, which it's not even, because they're not giving care, but it's caregivers. And like mine did, she'll groom you. Well, first of all, the social workers are trained to play the biological parents and the foster parents against each other. So then that becomes a rivalry. And now the foster parent is saying, well, I provide a better environment. I'm a better parent, so I deserve this child. Not God, not the womb that God put this child into, not any of that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter that we're completely changing the future of these children, of these families by man, not by God. We by man are changing these entire futures, which are not productive. It's very detrimental. It's devastating. It's attempted murder on people, actually, and on children. And then the fosters will change at the last minute and say, oh, now we want to adopt the child. And then it becomes this whole argument and game in the courts of, who can buy the child the newest sneakers, and, all of that is what it comes down to. When this has nothing to do with that. Poverty has nothing to do with abuse. It does not equate or, immediately indicate abuse whatsoever. As growing up in a mansion and on an island, I was at all of my normal friends' homes all the time because I just wanted to see what a normal family and a mom and dad was like and live in that. So I actually will argue that poverty or working class or any of that is a much more wholesome and just thrive. You learn so many life lessons. Your hardships are your greatest life directors. We're all unique for a reason based on the family and the origins that we have. There's so many things that play into that we are messing with as man versus God. And so we really need to really check ourselves about that and think about that as well.
Right. All the money that they collect, you would think maybe they would help just pay utilities for some of these poor families, or maybe help buy them food. If poverty is such a critical thing for taking a child from home, why not just give them the money to help them buy the food, pay their electric bill, pay their rent or mortgage, buy them a car if they need to get to and fro work and get the kids to school? Like, how come those aren't solutions? How come it's just, nope, we'll just take them out of the home and we'll solve the problem? I mean, you have to think about that, folks. Like, you have to say, well, why would they do that? Why wouldn't they just give them money?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because also there's a thing where you have to understand that these foster parents and everything are raising the children the way that the state wants them to be raised. So you're getting rid of organic biological families because you want children that are going to be split, and then you're putting them in fake, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, in these families that they're supposed to be happy with and everything. And
no, there's a delay, Megan. I know it's screwing everything up. There's been like a 3-second delay. I don't know what's going on with Zoom, but it's been like that the whole show. So you're hearing me say something, but then you're being so polite and stopping. But that's not. I want you to keep going with that because you were on a roll. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. That was it. What were you going to interject? There is a delay. Sorry, guys. We're trying.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, why deny a child the family experience? Right? The growth with his brothers and sisters, the growth with his parents.
No, but they're not.
Why not? Yeah.
They're not. They're not denying these. They're giving them a new, better family, and they're supposed to be happy about it. Like, how many adoptees do we have now? People can go on TikTok, look up #adoptee with 2 E's at the end. And there are so many people that are now grown adults, because now we have generations that have been adopted out and been put through this. And they come forward saying, like, I don't care if I had the nicest adoptive family. It wasn't my family. Like, you can tell when someone hugs their biological child versus when they hug their foster child, for example. Like, there's things that you can't replace, and ways that this affects the people that, and they're like, oh, and I was just taken out and given to this family and told that I should be happy about it because I have a mansion or because I'm provided for now. And it goes back to what you were saying. I say that all the time, Gino, as part of the Better Ways concept is, let's talk about why is there child abuse? Why are there issues of neglect in a home in today's society? And most of that trickles down to financial stress, which then creates domestic issues or substance abuse or, neglect because you can't afford groceries, things like that. So instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater or throwing out our neighbor who we're supposed to love like ourselves, we're not doing that. We're giving them to strangers and saying that this is the way, and we're just going to throw our tax dollars at it. And so we're taking care of it, right? That doesn't cut it. That's not okay. That's criminal. Like, that is insane if you can tell yourself that and be okay with it, But what we're talking about here is, what if a community is supportive there and does say, how can I help you pay this month's bill if you're struggling and you're about to lose, your power or whatever? How can I help you, with a job or work? How can I help you get to work if you don't have transportation? Hey, I have a small local, car dealership. Let me see if I can write it off this year and I can donate to a survivor or an advocate or something, or a victim, a car that makes them mobile and able to work. I mean, there's so many amazing ways that we could be supporting people. And then by default, people are also less like inclined to be abusive, to be neglectful and all that, because you have support, you have people there, you have, and I'm not talking about social workers and government people. I'm talking about people in your community, in your neighborhood, coming together, finding families to support, and it also doesn't mean that you get control. If you want to support and help people, then you decide what you want to do. If it's an amount of money, if it's a service, if it's something that you decide what you want to do for that person, you follow through. That doesn't mean that you get to control them or have say or do anything like that. That's very government mentality, by the way. This is about having faith in people, about getting rid of those feelings and those kinds of notions and creating better ways to interact, because you're deciding to do that, because you're going to lead by example. You know, the Lord was going through, when Jesus was going through the Bible, he wasn't shaming people. He wasn't telling people what to do or anything. He was living the example, and people gravitated towards that. People understood what that was. And then people have emulated. That's the whole point of the Bible. That's the point of Jesus. And the Lord sending down his son in human form so that we could relate, we could see as an example what are the attributes of Christ versus the attributes of the devil. And it makes it very easy in life to say, am I living in shame or fear or persecution or any of that of others, or am I living attributes of Christ like empathy, compassion, forgiveness, and these things that then bring us together? It creates an environment. We all have crap. I've said this so many times. We all have crap. So I don't know how any social worker or anyone involved in this in their right mind could wake up every day and pass such judgment and make these decisions and participate in this fraud and everything as people that, you know, believe in empathy and forgiveness and doing better and all of that. It's like AA or things like that saying I'm an addict and I'm a, you know, this and that every single day for the rest of your life. No, people go through hard times. You know, that's the mental health industry. These are more industries that are taking advantage of you to make you sick for life. And that's not, we can't have our minds and our hearts sick either, because that's what makes us physically sick. So these things all, you know, cascade on one another. But if we can get to the root of what are the attributes of Christ, what are the attributes of the devil, you know, how are we applying that? And especially in certain contexts like child protection, and how we're interacting as a community, and how we're supporting or helping families and children, which is ultimately our future, not the climate. So I'll leave it there. Al
Right.
Gore. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the whole thing about, you know, helping your community, helping each other. It's just about loving each other. I mean, that's what we used to be. This nation used to love each other. We had our differences, but we could still love each other and help our neighbor. You know, when the church was first formed in the book of Acts, it talked about right after the day of Pentecost, the church comes together and they gave as needed to each other. It wasn't a social welfare program that was instituted. It was charitable. It was from each person's heart, and what they had to give, they gave freely and of their own choice to give to others to help them. Mm-hmm. But the government is not, I don't know, I think it was Reagan that said, when the government says they're here to help, run, or whatever that famous saying is. But that's so true. They're not here to help. They're never going to help us. We all need to, I mean, I know most of the people watching this show, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. They get it. But I'm saying anybody that just happens to scroll to this channel and what are they talking about? We do not support anything that the government is doing to fund and help families right now. They don't. They're terrorizing American families by their legislation. And to be honest, this is another thing I hear a lot, Meghan. There's a lot of people that say, well, we need to change the laws. We need to do this. No, we don't, because it's the people that oversee the laws. Do you think they're going to follow the laws? They're not following the ones that are already on the books that are supposed to be protecting us. So, like, that's all garbage. It's nonsense. Do I think things need to change eventually? Yes, once the other problems get fixed so that this can't happen again. But it's this thing of healing from, and this is healing from the lies and the narrative that have been perpetrated against all of us. We need to heal from that and say, okay, now I see clearly. Now it's time to fix the problems. No more dragging our feet. No more sitting on our hands. Let's actually take the wheel and start driving this mother, because I'm sick of it.
Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's time for it. And I think that sometimes it's too simple for people, but it really is refreshing when we can break it down that simply. And again, we can know, for me, I've always said, like I said earlier, I support law enforcement. I support, this, that, and the other, but I will never support corruption. And that's where we're at this point. Our government is corrupt. It has gone rogue, and we need to address that. That's our duty and our right as citizens. That's a broken record. Now I'm preaching, but, we just need to reiterate that sometimes. And when it comes to our children, we're supposed to be up in arms. I've just seen convoys and efforts and everything on everything else under the sun, but for the children lately, and who's really talking about the children outside of, again, these big distractions and big movies from patriot influencers and everything, which is just recreating what we're saying that we're trying to stop. So, you know, take it for what you will. Any awareness on the issue is always going to be great. I'm never going to talk against it. But again, when it's a twist of the reality or a twist of the issue, I'm going to want to address that. We've got questions and people need to answer. And, that's very valid. The National Center needs to answer questions. They should be investigated. Adam Walsh's case should be reopened. Tim Ballard and OUR and Thorne and Ashton Kutcher and all these other organizations and their puppet celebrities should all be questioned and investigated in the very least, because we already know what it is. So, that it's time to just be lawfully, peacefully saying that we put our foot down and this is what needs to happen moving forward. And we have to come together. We can sit and wait for them all we want, or we can complain all we want, but really action is what it is. And when they start seeing us come together and when we start forming our own stuff where they're not even needed, like, why do we even have to fight them? Why don't we phase them out? I mean, if you created a group in your community that was actually helping families and everything, then you can apply for even the contract for that next year in the county, and you can take the funding away from CPS and say, hey, we don't do what they do. We beat them to the punch, and we actually support families. We provide this and that for them. We don't take children from the families. There's no incentives on this. We have no problem with transparency and oversight, and you can just take that over. That world doesn't even need to exist. We don't give that space if you actually think about it.
Yep. All great ideas, Meghan. They just need to be implemented. So, all right. Well, another great show, Meghan. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much on Rumble, Foxhole. YouTube, I'm still not 100% sure what's going on with YouTube. It says it's live, but then it seems like nothing's happening over there. Maybe they shut us down. I have no idea. I got to check that out after the stream. But I'm trying to get the YouTube thing going again. We'll see what happens. But anyway, we're so thankful for all of you guys for joining us again tonight. Thank you for your patience. I know last night the internet problems again. It's like this is demonic stuff, Meghan. Like this, you can't make this stuff up. Like, we were ready to go. We had everything lined up.
So you literally cannot.
It's just ridiculous how often we run into problems like that. But again, we're just thankful for all of you. And please do, like Meghan said, if you guys can just share the program and hit that thumbs up, that would be amazing. Red Pill over here on Foxhole. Meghan, always a pleasure, sis. Appreciate you.
Love you, Gino. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. Please share this out. Meet us over on X, interact, and let's talk over there, and join us next week. Thank you so much. God bless.
Yep.